Okay, we've talked a lot about the different types of trauma reactions that children might experience following these types of events. We've talked a lot about what you as teachers can do to care for yourselves, but we haven't talked yet about how you can help the child in terms of gathering more information and referring on when they're needed. So sometimes there's just only so much that you as a teacher can do, and sometimes there is a need to arrange further assistance. So what we're going to cover now is how you can do this and how you can gather more information from the child. So you'll find that there's, in your teacher manual from page 31 onwards, you'll find some strategies for doing this. The first strategy is the obvious one of talking to the young person. Of course, this will depend on the age of the child and how well you know the child, and may actually need to involve other staff members of the school, so guidance officers, nurses, counsellors, whatever is available in your environment. But first and foremost, it can be helpful to talk to the young person. As we said, sometimes they're just not aware that what they're experiencing is normal and that it's a reaction to stress, and they might be confused themselves. If you are going to sit down and talk with the young person, there's a few tips that we can go through in how to make this the most successful talk as possible. So the first one is to create a safe environment. So generally the school is designed to be a safe environment, but particularly when it comes to discussing emotions, and especially with teenagers, this can be quite a threatening task for them. So create a safe environment, a comfortable environment where they can sit down, you get down on their level, nothing intimidating. Let them know that, they don't have to sort of talk too much, but you're just wanting to be there to support them. And here's some things that you can say. So just some basic ideas of, you've been through a lot, everyone reacts differently to these sort of things, and it's normal to find it difficult to talk about. Letting them know that it's okay that they're finding it difficult. And sometimes just breaking the ice like that can get them talking. It's important for you as a teacher to convey understanding and to let them know that you do understand what they've been through. You may have been through it yourself even, and to show empathy and sympathy where needed. It's a good idea to start with general questions and move into more specific questions. So give them the chance to respond to a more general question first, and then if you're not getting anywhere, you can try with more specific questions, but be careful not to push. So start with some things like, how have things been going with you since the floods or the storms or whatever the event might have been? So give them a chance to generally come out and answer the question. And if not, then you can move on to more specific questions like, I've noticed that you've stopped doing some of the things that you used to enjoy. Can you tell me a bit about that? So being very careful not to sort of push and let them open up at their own pace. When you are talking to the young person, it's important to show them that you're listening. And obviously you need to do this by looking at them, but also by checking that you understand. So when they tell you something, it's a good idea to almost repeat back to them what you've heard, just to make sure that you've understood them correctly. So something like, it seems like things have been a bit difficult at home since the flood, and that mum and dad are also feeling a bit stressed. Is that right? So try and repeat back in your own words what you think the issue is for them, and then check that that's correct. A really important tip is to acknowledge their emotions as real and distressing. Even if it seems out of proportion, or even if it seems like something that another person wouldn't be upset by, it doesn't mean that it isn't actually very real and distressing for that young person. So acknowledge their emotions and acknowledge that they are real, they're distressing, and that they can impact on them. Another tip is to focus on the strengths and positive coping. So if you have noticed that the young person is doing something positive in some areas, or they're still enjoying some of the activities they used to do, or they've helped another child out during this time, or they've done something positive or shown some strengths, focus on those and let the child learn to pick up on those as well. As I mentioned before, sometimes this can be a bit easier with the support of other teachers who might know the child particularly well, the principal, the guidance officer, counsellor, the nurse. If the child already has an existing relationship with another staff member, it might be worthwhile considering bringing them in as well. Something important to consider is dealing with disclosures, and it is possible during the course of talking to the young person that they may disclose certain things that you need to react to. And As a first point of call, it's important for you to be aware of your school policies with how to deal with those disclosures and then manage them on an individual basis. If you've already talked to the young person and you haven't gotten anywhere, or you think it's necessary to sort of talk to the parents as well, then you can do so. So you can discuss your concerns with the caregiver and obtain background information when necessary. So sometimes it's about informing the parent that there's a problem at school. Sometimes it's about checking whether it's happening at home. Sometimes it is about letting the parents know that you're there to help. So there might be all sorts of different reasons for talking to the caregiver. Sometimes it's difficult to talk to parents about non-academic or non-school related things, and it might be awkward for you and for them, but the best way is to create a quite informal environment, a non-threatening and supportive environment, just as you did for the young person. Again, in some cases it might be useful to involve other staff members such as the principal or counsellor. You might also start by asking the parent general questions and asking them to comment before you give specific details of the behaviours that you've noticed. So something like, your family's been through an awful lot lately. I just wanted to check in and see how things are going. Or perhaps, how has Sam been going? Have you noticed any changes or anything that you're concerned about? So give them the chance to comment first. And if needed, then you can express your specific concerns about the child's behaviour while being sensitive and respectful to the family. So something like, I've noticed some changes in Sam's behaviours and I wondered whether you were seeing the same behaviours at home. So again, giving them a chance to sort of comment or even highlight the changes themselves. So gathering more information from the caregivers is an important step and may be important in helping you work out what's going on, but also may help you figure out ways that you can help the family. When you have presented that information, it's important to check with the caregiver and see if they agree with the concerns. Perhaps they don't. Perhaps they say, no, I haven't seen any of those behaviours at home at all. And that's really useful information to find out what are they doing at home that is creating a more, perhaps a safer environment, or what are you doing at school that might have a little bit more stress associated with it. So perhaps it is about being in that classroom environment with other children around. Or it might be the other way around, that yes, they've noticed it at home and that there's something that both environments have in common there. Check if there are any issues at home that may be contributing to the child's behaviour. So give the parents a chance to actually comment on this. Say something like, is there anything else going on at home or with friends that might make it difficult for Sarah at the moment? Give them a chance to think about if they have noticed anything like that. Most importantly, it's very important to normalise difficulties and reassure the family. So reassure them and let them know that these types of reactions are normal following these traumatic events, and that the fact that the child is having some difficulties coping is not necessarily an indication that they've done something wrong. It's something that happens for a lot of kids, and that there are avenues of support for them. So that leads into checking how the teacher in school can help the family. Saying something like, it seems like Sarah's having some difficulties at the moment. If you think you might find it useful to get some help managing right now, I can help you find the appropriate person. So sometimes just that step of suggesting that they get further assistance can be quite difficult for the parent to hear or agree to, but sometimes it's all that it takes. So that's where it might be important for you to have on hand your tip sheets about how to gain further assistance and be able to provide information to the family as they request it. Okay, so as the teacher, you tend to see a lot of the child's behaviours in the classroom and in the playground, and you actually see them for a significant portion of time during the day. So you're in an ideal position to really determine when further referral might be indicated. So the following two slides talk about signs that it might be important to organise a referral for the young person. So signs that you want to be on the lookout for are when symptoms persist or worsen over time. So if they just keep going on or they get worse. If the young person shows a significant decline in academic performance. If the problems begin to interfere with daily functioning or cause significant distress or really interfere in the classroom environment. If the specific problems regulating emotions seem to be ongoing or worsening, so the difficulty controlling crying or the anger or the aggressiveness might get worse over time. Another sign would be if you notice any significant and lasting changes in social functioning. So if it starts to impact on friendships and even their interpersonal skills, this might be a sign that further assistance is required. So another sign that further referral might be indicated are behaviours that disrupt others regularly. And this might be disrupting other members of the class, disrupting teachers, or even out in the playground. Difficulties that prevent the young person from engaging in age-appropriate tasks, or difficulties that return to behaviour typical of a younger child, would also be a sign that perhaps further referral is indicated. So this might be the type of example we heard earlier with the young girl who returned to wetting her pants. So if she continued that behaviour and wasn't able to progress forward, then this might be a sign that referral is indicated. Or perhaps a child or teenager who doesn't progress and develop normally in terms of building independent skills and rather relies on their parent for behaviours, this might also be a sign. Behaviours that exist in multiple areas would typically indicate the need for referral. So if you see the behaviour at home, at school, in the classroom, in the playground, in sporting events, hobbies, then this would be worth considering. Another factor that might indicate the need for referral would be ongoing stresses outside of school. So if you know that the family is continuing to experience stress, they're continuing to experience difficulties with the home environment, rebuilding their home, financial hardship, ongoing mental health problems for the parents, whatever it might be, then this might be a sign that further referral is indicated. Basically, anything that causes significant distress or concern to the child or family is worth referring on. Okay, so if you have decided that perhaps it is a good idea to get further help for the young person or the parent, then there's several things that you can do here. So how to get help. Your first point of call should be whatever resources you might have available to you within the school environment. So a tip would be to become familiar with all the sorts of resources and support staff that you have operating in your school or the local community. So you might have several programs running. You might have a guidance officer or a nurse or a counsellor who offers assistance as part of their service. So become familiar with that and become familiar with the referral pathways, so how you would go about getting assistance for the child. Another tip is to become familiar with community-based resources. So there are lots of really great services out there, either face-to-face or over the phone or over the internet, that can be very helpful for young people and for their parents. Kids Helpline is a good one that's been around for quite a long time. Lifeline provides a lot of counselling services. Parentline is quite useful for the parents themselves. And we have the Australian Centre of Grief and Bereavement and Beyond Blue. So I'd encourage you to have a look through your teacher manual at all these resources and get online and have a look at their websites and the types of things that they offer. These can all be a first point of call as something for the child or the parent to contact and use prior to needing to go to a professional in terms of a psychologist or whatever it might be. So if you do decide, or if the parent decides or the child decides that they would like to see a mental health professional, then there's also several options. So there's several different professionals they can see, and they're based in lots of different locations. So you've got your community-based professionals, which will be your KIMS workers. So this is your child and youth mental health services. Now, there are some around everywhere, so it might be useful for you as teachers to become familiar with the locations or who the worker is that might service your area, and try and get in contact with them and find out the best way of referring to them. The other option is the access to allied psychological services. Now, the best way to access these services really is to go and see your GP, and the GP will tend to refer to the appropriate point of call. You can also see private professionals, so psychologists and psychiatrists where necessary. There are rebates through private health, And certainly you can get onto the Australian Psychological Society to see a listing of psychologists in the area, and you can even look at the subtypes, so psychologists who specialise with children and psychologists in 50 kilometres of where you're based. Probably the best approach for children and parents to aid in this referral process to mental health professionals is to go along and see their GP. So they must be seen, the GP must be seen as a first point of call to be able to access the services through Medicare. So the GP would conduct an initial assessment with the young person and the parent as required, and they would formulate a mental health care plan and refer them to appropriate psychologists in their areas. And this allows the family to access to psychological services with a significant rebate from Medicare. So this is in addition to the private health rebates, and they're also able to provide referrals to ATAPs if it's appropriate for them. So if you get to the point where you think that the child or the parent needs to see somebody and they've agreed, or even if you just want to provide them with information and let them think about it, the first point of call is to refer them to their general practitioner. If you require any further information about the teacher training packages, there's a couple of people to contact and their details are listed there.